Hello and welcome to Daily Records. I am Tommy Burton, and today's album is likely one of my favorites by one of my very favorite bands, although it kind of gets a little overlooked. This is Life's Rich Pageant by R.E.M. This came out on July 28th, 1986. This is their fourth album, so this is the pre-major Warner Brothers releases. But this is sort of, a lot of the songs on here is the soundtrack to my junior high years in the mid-'80s. Of course, R.E.M. at this point had firmly established itself as a college or alternative rock band. And it was kind of interesting because they built up this little bit of a following. And then they decided for this album to record with Don Gehman. And Don Gehman's a name that people are probably familiar with because Gehman was closely associated with John Mellencamp or John Cougar Mellencamp. And so when you think of artists like John Mellencamp, usually you don't think of someone like R.E.M. But they recorded this album at John Mellencamp Studios in Indiana. And it was the only album they did with Gehman because they kind of went back to a little bit more of that sort of dense sound on their earlier albums. And you know, this album, I guess the reason this album sort of falls through the cracks when people talk about that early R.E.M. period is that it is a big rock album, and which is precisely one of the reasons I enjoy it. I mean, the guitars are a little bigger, and it's a little bit more of a bombastic sound, which I think may be a turnoff, particularly to R.E.M. fans. But I like a lot of R.E.M. and I like varied material. But after this, they teamed up with Scott Litt, who remained their producer and collaborator for the next several albums. So if it was an experiment, I don't know that it was an experiment that they felt like necessarily worked. But I always go back to the songs, and so it's a great collection of songs. And you know, you've got the political stuff like "Fall on Me." The Chicken Little song, that's on there. The band The Click, their song Superman, which was a big favorite of mine when I was a younger kid. Mike Mills, actually, the bass player for R.E.M., sings that song. And, of course, Fall on Me and Superman were the two hits on the album. It's a really good album full of really nice songs. I'm a big fan of I Believe. It kicks off with a great banjo lick, and so just a wonderful collection of material. Now, funny enough, if you look really closely at the back here, the track listing it's not quite the track listing that ended up on the album, because you had side one, which they called the dinner side. I mean, Begin to Begin. But if you look at the back cover, it says Hyena, which actually the second track is These Days. Fall on Me is the third track. So don't see this album out in the wild and pick it up and look at the back of it and think, well, where's Superman? You know, where are these songs? They're there. They're just not in the same order. And there's a little plus sign at the bottom. So it's one of those strange things about R.E.M. That there's 12 tracks on the album. There's only 10 listed here. So there's actually more material than what the album credits itself as. So you can't judge a book by its cover. But R.E.M.'s first foray into a big rock sound, I don't think they revisited again until probably until the 90s when they did Monster in those records, which I also love. But definitely an accessible album. And so if R.E.M. is a little bit aloof to you and perhaps you can't quite sink your teeth into them, this might be a great album to go with, because it's definitely just a big hooky sound, and but it's got that sort of jangly sort of R.E.M. Sort of feel to it. So that's today's daily record, Life's Rich Pageant by R.E.M. Like, comment, subscribe down below, share the video if you feel inclined. I appreciate it. And follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's TommyBurton75. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys tomorrow with another daily record.